Okay, all right. So now, this part now will focus now on Staphylococcus because again, Staphylococcus are really the Staphylococcus species are really quite an aggressive type of organisms. They cause a wide range of infections. So and mostly if usually gram-positive cocci na catalase positive, usually ato yung ma-isolate are the Staphylococcus species. All right. Yeah. So again, ito yung mga initial natong biochem reactions sa Staphylococcus. Again, it's of course catalase positive. But since again, napa siya laing kauban na catalase positive which is Micrococcus, that's why we subjected it to another battery of tests. So for OF glucose or oxidation fermentation, unsay gani ang result? It's a fermenter, okay? So asa tong yellow ang tube, both of the tube, di ba? Or yeah, both of the tube or pwede pod katurang na ay mineral oil na tube because again, it's a fermenter. Next, bacitracin susceptibility test, unsa siya susceptible or resistant? It's resistant, therefore, unsay zone of inhibition niya? It's 6 millimeters. Because again, di ba, if resistant ang atong organism, ang katurang diameter sa disc atong i-measure. Okay? And lastly is for modified oxidase test, unsa man ang result? Positive or negative? It's negative. Okay, all right. Now, for the differentiation of Micrococcus and Staphylococcus, guys, there are other tests to perform. Okay, so katura sa ang percent, kay medyo, again, medyo common siya, pero there are other tests that you want to perform. If you really want to differentiate Micrococcus and Staphylococcus. But again, we want to be cost-effective, okay? We also want to, di punta, like, dili ta ganahan na i-perform good tanan, no? Na i-perform good ang tanan na tests na maka-differentiate sa Staph and Micrococcus. If you have 1 or 2 tests that are really established na maka-differentiate sa duha, then use them, di ba? At least mas cost-effective siya, dili kay ta kalas-kalasan, okay? Alright, so again, we want to identify our organism as efficiently as possible, okay? And without spending a lot of reagents, without spending a lot of time. So the quickest way possible, pero efficient po dato ang pag-perform and accurate. Okay? Alright. So again, we'll now start with Staphylococcus. Again, if you have already assumed or sure na dyan ka na Staphylococcus gid ni, so the next test you will perform is your coagulase test. So start first with your slide coagulase test. And if that's positive, then it's Staphylococcus aureus. And if it's if coag negative, it could be S. aureus and your CNS or your coagulase neg Staphylococcus. Okay? So your CNS. Dili na ang central nervous system. Okay? That's your coagulase neg Staphylococcus. By the name itself, coagulase neg. Alright? Okay. And again, nganong naapod ang S. aureus diri? Because again, the slide coagulase test, it's considered to be obsolete na. Dili kayo siya definitive. Because again, of the enzyme pod na type of coagulase. Okay? Pwedeng, na yung mga S. aureus na naaani na enzyme, example, pero napoy uban na wala. That's why mo negative siya. Naadya po siya sa negative. So, to be really definitive, we now perform the tube coagulase test. Okay? By the name itself, sa tube na to siya i-perform, pero still coagulase. And if it's really positive, then it's S. aureus. Okay? Siya na yun na. True coagulase. And coagulase neg is, of course, your CNS or your coagulase neg Staph. Now, actually, the tube coagulase test is considered to be the definitive identification again of most of your Staph aureus or your Staph species. Now, for basta gani tube coagulase positive, it's usually S. aureus. But I'm not saying that it's the only tube coagulase positive. Most of your clinical isolates, okay, according to Mahon, na ma-isolate or na tube coagulase positive, it's really Staph aureus. That's why, gina-consider ang S. aureus as true coagulase. Siya yun ang true coagulase, alright? But there are other Staph species na tube coagulase positive. Example, S. intermedius, okay? Alright? S. intermedius and S. lutein, I think. Alright. So again, these are, less important. Okay, mga second option. Char. Yes, char. Okay, mga less important, mga not so well-known na mga Staph species. But again, usually, if mo ano gitag tube coagulase positive, if tube coagulase positive yun na siya, then we always assume or we assume na yun dayon na it's S. aureus. Alright? Because again, most of the clinical isolates na makuha sa lab tube coagulase positive is Staphylococcus aureus. Alright, so we'll now go to the different principles of this test. So for the first one is of course your slide coagulase test. Again, according to Mahon, again, dili na siya trusted. It's an obsolete method na daw. Dili na kayo gina-perform. what we do is definitive na gyud is tube coagulase. And if you do perform slide coagulase, dapat mo perform kag tube coagulase to really confirm the results. Okay? Alright, so ang purpose of slide coagulase, we detect the presence of this type of enzyme, coagulase na cell-bound. Okay? Or clumping factor. Please take note. Ayan, clumping factor or your cell-bound coagulase. By the name itself, it's a coagulase type of enzyme, cell-bound, meaning naa siya sa cell wall sa imuhang kagaw, ang enzyme. Okay? So cell-bound, naa siya sa cell. Alright? Okay. Principal, fibrinogen, okay, which is found in your plasma. Okay, rabbit, human, or pig plasma. Okay, so fibrinogen, plasma itong gamiton. Since kailangan matag plasma, unsa man na additive atong gamiton. You have EDTA. We use EDTA and not citrate because ang citrate daw pwede siyang maka-false positive sa imong mga results. Okay, so we don't use citrate. We use EDTA. Okay, pwedeng rabbit, human, or pig plasma. In the presence of the cell-bound coagulase or clumping factor, mahimong mo create siya og fibrin clot formation. So iyahang i-change ang fibrinogen to fibrin. So naay clotting na mahitabo. Now remember that your clumping factor is in the cell wall, di ba, of your bacteria. Now, in the presence of fibrinogen, pag interact niya with fibrinogen, what happens is mo precipitate ang fibrinogen on the walls of the bacteria or on the surface of the bacteria. That is why na ay clot formation na ma-observe. Okay, that's for slide coagulase test. Again, obsolete method na, dili na kaayo gina-perform as according to Mihon. Dapat definitive na we go to tube coagulase. Alright? So here's an example. Ayan. So ang positive nato is clumping. As you can see na yung mga kumpul-kumpul. Alright? And negative is smooth suspension. Alright, that's for slide coagulase. Unsa gani na type of coagulase atong gina-detect, it's your cell-bound coagulase or your clumping factor. Don't worry na ako'y na ako'y mnemonic ana later. Alright, okay. Next, you have your tube coagulase. By the name itself, it's still a coagulase test. We perform in a tube. But this time, atong gina-detect na enzyme is your free coagulase or your Staphylococcus. Now, as you can see, medyo specific na siya. It's really Staphylococcus, right? And mas sensitive po siya na test. Alright, so principle in the presence of, again, still the same reagent, fibrinogen, in the presence of your coagulase and coagulase reacting factor, okay. Alright, so this Staphylococcus will react with this CRF to form a complex, okay, which will serve as thrombin, okay, it will serve as a thrombin, or basta ang point lang niya is iyahang, again, i-convert ang fibrinogen to fibrin clot, okay? So again, that's your for free coagulase. Alright, ayan. So again, here's the positive result. Positive is clot of any size, so nigahi siya, alright? Mas maklaro gid siya, mas definitive pod. And ang negative is smooth suspension. Now, a very important thing to remember lang sa tube coagulase, guys, is you incubate the tube, at 37 degrees Celsius for 4 hours only. Okay? 4 hours ra gyud. Alright? 4 hours. Now, after 4 hours, if wala nimo na-detect na naay clot, what you do is kuwaon daw ni siya. My gosh, wala na ako'y ink. Sinasabi ko talaga sa inyo. Alright. So, kuwaon ni siya, set at room temp na for 24 hours. Okay? Because pwede kang mahimo, if imo na siyang i-prolong than 4 hours, prolong ang incubation at 37 for more than 4 hours, what happens is, pwedeng ma-false negative, kay ang clot, mulize na siya because of the enzyme, fibrinolysin. Okay? By the name itself, lysine, fibrino, so yung i-lyse ang fibrin clot, okay? And mas ma-activate daw siya at 37 degrees Celsius. That is why, after 4 hours, if wala pa dyan po'y clot, tangtango na siya sa incubator and let it stay at room temperature for 24 hours. And then i-check na po siya after 24 hours, alright? Okay, so again, within 4 hours lang siya. Why? Because again, at 37 degrees Celsius, mas ma-activate ang fibrinolysin, so pwedeng ma-false negative. Imbis na na-clot, niya kay na-prolong man nimo og incubate, na-activate ang fibrinolysin, na-lyse noon tong clot. So wala na makita na clot. So false negative. Alright? Okay, so that's for tube coagulase. Alright. So again, sa to ako ang mnemonics ana to determine you have SB TF. Okay? So this is slide Slide coagulase. So, yung detect is bound. And T is tube. Yung ginadetect is free. Okay, so unsay mnemonic ana? Starbucks. Starbucks tayo friend. Oh, di ba? Starbucks tayo friend. And then ay mas bastos ana. Starbucks tapos di ba bastos? Okay, so depende rin ninyo. Again, Starbucks tayo friend or Starbucks tapos like F. Okay? Alright, so dira na ako ingon ng bastos kay wadan ko trabaho. Shots. Okay, ano eh. Again, slide coagulase, it detects your cell-bound coagulase or clumping factor. Don't forget clumping factor. And your tube coagulase, it detects your free coagulase. So SB, TF, Starbucks tayo friend or Starbucks tapos okay, alright. Ayan, so that's for your true coagulase, Staphylococcus aureus, and coagulase test. Now, we now go to your coagulase neg. All right. So, of course, din na to kalimtan ng mga coagulase neg because, again, they're also very much important. Right? Okay, so we'll start first. The next step to perform if coag neg yun siya, like sa tube coagulase negative, we now subject it to novobiocin susceptibility test. And if it's novobiocin resistant, then that is your Staphylococcus Staphylococcus saprophyticus, sorry. And if it's sensitive, you now perform again the next test, which could be other CNSDI. Basta again, makakita ka na cons or coagulase neg, you now perform novobiocin. If it's resistant, then that's Staphylococcus saprophyticus. And if it's sensitive, it could be the other CNS. So, diri na po tayo focus. So, if again, naakay sensitive, subject na po to another test, which is polymyxin B susceptibility. If it's resistant, then that is Staphylococcus epidermidis. And if it's susceptible, then it's your other CNS. The less mga important na or kato na mga less known or mga less, ano na yun, dili kayo common na mga cause of infection na staph. Okay, alright. Staphylococcus saprophyticus, na-mention din sa lecture, di ba? Common among sexually active, ayan, sexually active young women. Alright? UTI in sexually active young women. Oh, di ba? Susko, staph saprophyticus. Di ko na siya malimtan. It's very easy to remember. Like mga case study, a female who has a lot of sexual partners went to the doctor because of a urinary tract infection, blah, blah, blah. And then it's a coagulase neg staph. Unsay possible identity? Press the buzzer. It's Staphylococcus saprophyticus. O, di ba? Ayan. And of course, staph epidermidis, a common isolate or a common microflora of the skin. So, di ba? Staphylococcus epidermidis, again, well known to produce mga biofilms, right? So, therefore, pwede siyang makakos og kanang sa catheters, right? So, pwede makakos og mga infections once those catheters or mga implant devices are put inside the body na naay staph epidermidis na colonies, right? Okay. So, ayan. So, just a few remaining tests again. So, for novovirus susceptibility, still the same sa bacitracin. It's an antibiotic. Detect the susceptibility or resistance of the bacteria to this antibiotic. Pila ka units? 5 micrograms this time. Ang bacitracin, pila to ka units? 0.04. Okay. Again, we use MHA. Alright? We put 5 micrograms novovirus this. And at 37 degrees Celsius, now we observe for, again, zone of inhibition. You may be thinking, ano ang bacitracin kay BAP ginagamit? Again, depende na siya sa test. Depende po sa antibiotics na kailangan. But most of the antibiotic tests or general yun na antimicrobial susceptibility testing, we perform that on MHA. Okay, example kanina, novobiocin. Alright, observe again for zone of inhibition. Positive or susceptible siya if greater than 16. Ayan, 16 millimeter ang diameter. And negative if, again, less than equal 16. Okay, so if greater than 16, sensitive. Resistant, less than equal 16. Okay, so 16 and below, that's resistant. And greater than 16, muna siya imuhang susceptible. So, kinsa ganitong resistant sa novobiocin, you have staph saprophyticus. Okay, alright. And next, still the same, polymyxin B. Antibiotic yapon, inoculation, aseptically plate, incubate, and then look for zone of inhibition. Still the same. Susceptible na bod greater than 10 millimeter diameter and resistant greater than equal, less than equal 10. Okay? So, still the same. Greater than 10, susceptible. Less than equal to 10 ang resistant. Okay. Alright. And the last type is we also have a very specific, okay, or very sensitive na culture media, really for Staph aureus, and that's your mannitol salt agar. Okay, our purpose again niya is the recovery and identification of Staphylococci. Now, remember your Staphylococci are very halophilic. Okay, when you say halophilic, they love salt, right? So nga to ang inhibitors is the 7.5% NaCl. Because again, it's an inhibitor. It does not let other gram-positive cocci ba grow because again, of the 7.5% NaCl. And Staphylococcus ra ang ganahan ana, di ba? So muna ang sila radyo mutubo, okay? That is why it's considered to be an inhibitor, okay? So 7.5% NaCl. On sa itong indicator, it's phenol red, again for pH. And the carbohydrate, wag na mag-isip, it's mannitol, alright? Ayan. So here's an example. This is your mannitol salt agar na wala pa'y gi-inoculatan na kagaw. And again, yellow colonies, meaning ni ferment siya mannitol because again, mannitol fermenter, sugar, pag mo ferment ang usa ka kagaw ana unsay mga result, acids. So therefore, mo change ang color to yellow. Ayan. So muna siyang yellow colonies, usually S. aureus good, S. aureus. And the non-mannitol fermenter, fuchsia, red, or colorless, the other staph species, Saprophyticus, S. epidermidis, and pwede pong Micrococcus spp. Now, again, there are some Micrococcus species na pwedeng mo grow pod sa maka-tolerate sa 7.5% NaCl. But again, most of the time, we do this, it's usually for the confirmation of the presence of Staphylococci. Because again, they are the ones that are really halophilic or that can tolerate such high salt concentrations. Okay? Alright. So, and again, basta yellow colonies gani on mannitol salt agar, wag nang mag-isip. That's your Staph aureus. Alright. Ngano ganing yellow? Because it ferments mannitol or Staph aureus ferments mannitol. And since sa fermentation, di ba, ang result kay acids, it changes the pH indicator from red to yellow. Alright. Munang na ay yellow colonies. Alright. So for the next video na pod, we'll now go to our catalase neg ng mga gram-positive cocci. Of course, you have your strep and Enterococcus. All right.